Hey guys, it's Luca, and today I want to talk about Lotus Field combo, the Pioneer deck. I think this deck has been like consistently evolving over time. People keep trying new stuff, and I think some of the additions actually make the deck better. So recently, there was a list at 5 by X Whale, and it included two Market Festival, and included kind of like the no win con, so you don't have Mastermind's acquisition or the fairy to find stuff out of your sideboard and win with the sideboard card. So you save a main deck slot and you also save a sideboard slot. You don't have to play Approach of the Second Sun on your sideboard. And first time I saw this deck, I was really confused. I'm like, well, how do they win? So actually, the way you win is you keep casting Peer into the Abyss, but you target your opponent. So you help them out. You help them draw a lot of cards. I think if you cast this, let's see. First time they go to 10 life, and they go to 5 life, and then they go to 2, then they go to 1, then they go to 0. So if you cast this 5 times, targeting your opponent, they take 20 damage. How do you cast it multiple times? Well, you Balagad Recovery. So Balagad Recoveries let you cast it 5 times. If you have a Lier, then you can cast it 9 times, up to 9 times, because you can flashback your Balagad Recoveries. So that's that's a big question. Like, is the deck better or worse by taking out a Mastermind's acquisition and killing people with Peer into the Abyss? I do think it's better. I think Peer to the Abyss is actually a pretty strong card. There's a lot of times where I'm playing the deck and I just cast it not as a win con, I just cast it as like a draw spell and then win the game from there. So it's almost as if you don't have any more dead cards in the deck. Omniscience is kind of a dead card though, and that's a whole other discussion if you can play this deck without Omniscience. I have played this deck without Omniscience, and you can definitely still win without Omniscience. Especially with the Market Festival, you can create a lot of mana with Market Festival when you start to just go off. So, let's see, what are other options in this deck? Sometimes people play the other Impulse, the Sorcery. Um, I forget what it's called. Shimmer of something. So that's another kind of a flex slot. Usually people play 3 Balabad recoveries, but I really like playing 4 when you have the Peer to the Abyss win con, because you really don't want to get into the situation where your only way to win game 1 is with Peer into the Abyss, and you just don't have enough ways to recur it. You can't kill your opponent. That can be super awkward. And also I've found with this deck that the deck is very like land hungry for your first 3 land drops, because basically you don't get to use your Lotus Field until you have 2 other land drops. So a situation that comes up a lot in this deck is like you're thinking about whether you should keep a hand that has land, Lotus Field, 5 spells. And you're just like, okay, should I take the risk and maybe I don't draw another land and I kind of lose? Or if I draw my land, I get to play my Lotus Field. So I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards Balagad Recovery should be a 4 in this deck, just because it lets you hit that 3rd land drop much more easily, but it's still like a relevant card late in the game. Um, it's also part of your like combo if you're winning with Peer into the Abyss. So the other kind of huge addition happened a few months ago is Hope Tender. Hope Tender is really really good if your opponent can't remove it. So I think it's a super strong sideboard option for this deck. You basically bring it in against, like mono green. Um, you can bring it in against mono white if they don't have a lot of creature removal. Uh, Obviously great in the mirror. Like those types of matchups where it's either a race or they just have no way to kill it. Hope Tender is really messed up because Hidden Strings, if you have like a Lotus Field and a Thespian stage copying Lotus Field, and you have a Hope Tender, your Hidden Strings untaps 1 Lotus Field and untaps your Hope Tender, which untaps 2 more lands. So your Hidden Strings cost 2 mana, and it gives you 8 mana. So your Hidden Strings is like plus 6 mana. Did I do the math right? Yeah. Normally Hidden Strings is plus 4 mana, but now if you have a Hope Tender, it's plus 8 mana. Sorry, plus 6 mana. And You can also do some cool stuff with Hope Tender if they have no blockers. You can hidden strings, and then you can cipher on your Hope Tender, attack them, get your hidden strings back, stuff like that. Um, Other cyber cards I've been really impressed with is Fading Hope. Fading Hope I've found to be, because basically with this deck you're just trying to buy time to combo. Even if you cast a sweeper like Ritual of Seer or to populate, it's not really game over. You might be low, they can kill you with a man land, they can just add more pressure to the board. It's really a stall tactic. So sometimes you just want to think like, does paying 1 mana to bounce one of their creatures, does that buy me the same amount of time as a depopulate or a Ritual of Soot? And in a lot of matchups the answer is yes, I think. For example, if your opponent taps out turn 3 to play Adeline and you Fading Hope it, that's probably buying you about as much time as a Wrath. Um, in Greasefang, obviously Fading Hope is way better than a Wrath because they play their Greasefang, you just bounce the Greasefang. Also, another matchup where it comes up with super good is against Creativity, because if they try to go for the combo kill, you just bounce their World's Fine Worm. I've been very impressed with Fading Hope. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe like 3 or 4 copies is correct. Dragonlord Jamoka is also really good. It's great against Spirits, it's great against any of the blue control decks. Against the blue control decks, you can just kind of like stall, and then just play Dragonlord Jamoka. If they don't have Aether Gust, they might just die that turn because they can't cast any spells, and then you just go off. And it's not very hard with this deck to go off after paying 6 mana. I like having at least one Zakama in the board. The list that I kind of copied, the X-Whales list, had 2 Zakamas. I always find it hard to decide in 2 9-drops, but Zakama is definitely, I almost always want to board it in because I don't want to rely on the Peer into the Abyss kill. In games 2 and 3, there's so many things that can go wrong. They could remove your Peer into the Abyss from the game. They could, like, there was a game where I got my Omniscience removed from the game. And if you don't have Omniscience, it's pretty hard to create enough mana to do the Peer into the Abyss kill, because you have to cast Peer into the Abyss like 5 times with Valgate Recovery, so it's about 50 mana, which is hard to afford 50 mana without Omniscience. Sphinx of the Final Word is pretty similar to Dragonlord Jamoka, but I am more fond of Dragonlord Jamoka just because what ends up happening a lot of times with this deck is like you have your Dragonlord Jamoka, you cast it off Lotus Field Thespian Stage, right? That's 6 mana. Like 7 is a lot harder than 6, I think. But there's obviously going to be situations where Sphinx is better than Dragonlord Jamoka. One of the things that comes to mind is like sometimes against blue-white control they may have March to exile your Dragonlord Jamoka, or maybe if you tap out for Dragonlord Jamoka they play Teferi and remove it. That's also kind of a blowout. So yeah, maybe the split's good. I'm kind of testing that out. Python Needle, people have realized this a while ago. It's a really good sideboard card in this deck, mainly just for the mono green matchup because you name Karn. And yeah, you can definitely still lose with the Python Needle in play. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, but in general, if you shut down their Karn, it really slows them down because they're not really trying to kill you in that matchup. They're just trying to get their Damping Sphere in play and protect it. Yeah, this is just a combo deck for those people who haven't seen the deck before. Probably like one of the things that's most powerful about this deck is that you're playing along the axis of lands, right? So if you keep a hand that has like 2 lands, a Lotus Field, and a Thespian Stage, you're going to go turn 1 land drop, turn 2 land drop, turn 3 Lotus Field, turn 4 Thespian Stage, copy your Lotus Field. There's really not many ways for your opponent to interact with that. Thoughtseize doesn't matter, counter spells don't matter, creature removal doesn't matter. There's a few things that can go wrong here. They could have like Boseiju on your Thespian stage, but that's pretty rare. Uh, Honestly, really the thing that counters you at that point is any deck that's like fast and killing you on turn 4. Uh, but I think that's really the strength of the deck is you're like a kind of a combo deck, but you're so heavily using lands that it's very difficult to interact, especially like your most important land has hexproof, which is literally almost impossible to interact with outside of stuff like Damping Sphere. Market Festival I think is a good innovation. It's pretty slow, but it lets you do some pretty cool things. Like you can win without a Lotus Field. Um, it gives you a 4-drop. Sometimes you do just want to play a 4-drop to further your game plan. You don't have enough mana to play like a Port over the pages or something. Also, like if you're going off, sometimes you may have already played your land for the turn and you have a Lotus Field in play, but your hidden strings are plus mana, but your Pour over the pages are not plus mana because you don't have another land that taps for 3. In which case, this gives you an opportunity to, you know, as you're comboing off, have a way to then have more mana. Otherwise, you have to do stuff like Arboreal Grazer in the Thespian stage, untap it, and copy Lotus Field, which is a lot more clunky. Yeah, I think this deck's probably tier 1. I don't really know. It feels really strong, and I think people may eventually all stop playing the Masterminds acquisition build. They may just go straight into the Abyss kill. And yeah, I do find it kind of impressive that people keep innovating and keep making the deck better. It's like every month there's like some new piece of tech. Like people didn't use Hope Tenders before, they didn't use Python Needles, Fading Hope, Dragonlord Jamoka is new tech. Now this Peer into the Abyss kill is new tech, Market Festival. So it's going to be interesting to see if people can keep making this deck better and better. Another flex slot, Behold the Multiverse. I think it's pretty good to have one. Sometimes foretelling it on turn 2 is just a really good play. Because a lot of times in this deck, you basically play a 2-drop on turn 2 and a 2-drop on turn 3. Because you go like land, Impulse, or Sylvan Scrying, get your Lotus Field, and then turn 3 you have another 2 mana to spend, and then you play your Lotus Field. So that's kind of perfect for Behold the Multiverse. But obviously it's like really expensive, so you can't put too many in your deck. It's also good in some of the trickier matchups, like people who are playing lots of Disruption. Like there's a lot of decks that post board have Duress and Thoughtseize, like Greasefang, Red Black. I've even seen some black green mid range decks, and a card like Behold the Multiverse is obviously insane against that kind of game plan. Yeah, so this is kind of the build. Maybe I'll go through one of my leagues and talk through kind of like the strategy and the play patterns, but pretty happy with this build, pretty happy with this deck. I think if it's not tier 1, it's pretty close. The weakness of this deck is Damping Sphere. Like if everyone just put 4 Damping Spheres in their sideboard, this deck would be really bad because it's almost always impossible to beat a Damping Sphere. Which is one of the reasons I took out a Boseiju. I only play 2. Because yeah, in theory you can Boseiju their Damping Sphere, but in reality, if you play a Lotus Field, they play a Damping Sphere, it's so hard to, because you lose your access to colored mana. You need to have like green mana and Boseiju, or like green mana, Sylvan Scrying, and then Boseiju next turn. It's just so slow and clunky. Usually the game's just over the top when they play that Damping Sphere. Market Festival is kind of an answer to Damping Sphere because it works through Damping Sphere, but even then it's just so slow that I don't think it's like realistic. A realistic way to win. Honestly, probably your best answer to Damping Sphere is just like Arboreal Grazer. Because you're just going faster, and the faster you go, the more mana you have to deal with the damage sphere when it comes down. Yeah, so that's this kind of just have a little chat about the list and the deck. Hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'm going to do another video shortly where I go through a league where I 4-1'd. See you guys. Hope you enjoyed the video.